So from a work standpoint, from a background, graduate high school in 2008, and it's during the financial crisis, and it was really tough to land a job. And so I was going everywhere, applying everywhere, couldn't get a break. And my family, which is kind of a fun story, is a Kentucky Fried Chicken family. So my grandfather worked with the Colonel. My mom worked there for like 40 years, did a bunch of different roles, ended up as a junior executive with Yum Corporation. She oversaw like almost 100 Kentucky Fried Chickens. And so I ended up calling somebody on her wall. She was pretty opposed to me working for Kentucky Fried Chicken. She wanted bigger and grander things for me. But I ended up getting in the restaurant business, and I did that for about 5 years. And I thought it was awesome. I really had a lot of fun. I think it's a fast-paced work environment. It rewards hard work. It taught me so much about people. I think I've come a long way, but when I first started, I kind of had like a nickname. Me and one of the guys I worked with, he was a little bit shorter and a lot nicer than me, and it was always like he was good cop, I was bad cop, and I've kind of outgrown that, obviously, as I've spent so much time in management. But, that's kind of how I cut my teeth. And I grew up in a family where they were talking about how to manage restaurants all the time. And I think it's very similar to day-to-day operations of any company. And so I kind of always look at it like I came from an operator family and I grew up in that kind of world. So yeah, bottom line is I worked up really quick with KFC. So I got a job as a front counter cashier. I think I was only in that position for like a month before I was promoted to my first management position. After a year there, I went to a very fast-paced, one of the largest restaurants and best producers in California. We had like 32 employees at the time. I came in as a shift. They made me an assistant general manager, and that's what I spent most of my time doing. And during that time, I trained shift supervisors, and the first manager I ever trained, she ended up winning her class as cadet of the year, kind of trainee of the year. And that was kind of my first dip into managing people and just my whole, stint with Kentucky Fried Chicken. And I'm eternally grateful. Learned a lot about processes, systems, that kind of stuff. And so I end up kind of getting bored with it. I have a short little gap where I'm working at a surf shop where I met my wife. I wasn't anything flashy there, but they did have me do a lot of stuff. I remember helping them with inventory and hiring and input on that kind of stuff. But bottom line is, I'm working at the surf shop. I'm wearing board shorts and flip-flops to work every day, and I'm getting really serious with my girlfriend. And her dad was a great man, stern man, and a good mentor to me as a young person. And he pulled me outside one night, and I'm sitting in front of my car. I was driving at the time an old 4Runner. I remember it was green, one of my favorite cars I've ever had. But I'm out there in front of my 300,000-mile 1994 4Runner in my flip-flops, and he goes, you're getting pretty serious with my daughter. And I said, yeah. And he goes, if you want to, continue and you really want to, potentially eventually marry her and go through that process, you can't be making minimum wage working at a surf shop wearing flip-flops to work. And I remember it sunk. It was one of those moments where him and I had a great relationship, and he was an advisor to me who I trusted. And then he had this like stern kind of moment with me where it was like, time to grow up a little bit. And so the next day, it was funny because I'm 25, and I wasn't making minimum wage. I was making a little bit more. So I wasn't completely at the bottom. But we hired this new girl, and I think she was like 16 or 17. She had to get permission slip from her parents to work. And I'm training her, and she's dumb as a doorknob. And so I remember having this moment where I'm like, I make probably $1 or $2 more than this 16-year-old who doesn't know her foot from her you-know-what. And I've got 5 years managing multi-million-dollar restaurants, managing people, and I'm here for what? Free surfboards. What am I doing? And so every day at my lunch break, I used to sit and I would watch Netflix. And so I had gone through all the shows. I'd watched Breaking Bad. I'd watched all of The Office. I had kind of been spending my time doing that. And I went in the back room and I deleted the Netflix app and I downloaded the Audible app. And when you downloaded Audible, you got one free book. And the very first recommendation when I opened the app and it said, you have credits to get one free book. it was Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so I started it that day, and I think within a week I read I listened to the book. It's not that long, but pretty quickly. And it was a major paradigm shift for me. It completely changed the way I looked at the world. I was like, oh my gosh, like you can make multiple revenue streams, not just have one job. Real estate, what is real estate? I just kind of like, it lit me on fire. I was so pumped, so excited. Like, what am I going to do with this? I'm going to be super successful. I'm going to kill it. That was kind of like what ended up happening. I just felt I'm going to be something special, and I was so inspired. And what was funny was back in high school, I had an acquaintance named Blake Comfort, and when I was working in the restaurants, and I thought I was pretty hot stuff. I think I was making like 40 grand a year, living at home with my mom. I had lots of Nikes, I'm like, okay, I'm crushing it for a young guy. And I remember him at some, social gathering being like, you're working a lot, you're in business, you should read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I kind of like wrote it off. But then I'm like, okay, now I've read this. Now who can I talk to in real estate? And so I basically started reaching out to different people. I signed up for, there was some goofy real estate class where you could get your realtor's license. So I was enrolled in that. It was like, I forgot the name of it. And it had a funky name here in San Diego. And I was basically enrolled for those classes. I had a local realtor out of Chula Vista who was willing to let me hang my license with her. And in the meantime was going to let me do open houses. I went and kind of sat through a pitch from her. And, I was just kind of like, okay, I'm going to get into real estate and start figuring it out. But I also called Blake and I said, hey, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I would love to come and spend, a few days in your office a week for free. I just want to learn what you guys are doing, because I knew that they were doing something in real estate. I didn't know anything more than that. I just knew they were a real estate family. And he goes, okay, let me talk with my dad and my sister. And I remember I was surfing blacks. I'd gotten out. I'm like in my 4Runner, and I'm coming down La Jolla Village Drive over by USD. And like it opens up, you can kind of see the whole ocean there. It's like a beautiful lookout. It's like above the Scripps Pier. And I get a phone call from Blake and he goes, hey, I talked with my family and we want to hire you. And so this is when I get into my first real estate negotiation. I said, well, he goes, we want to bring you on for 2 days a week, $11 an hour. And I said, I'm going to need at least 3 days a week, $11 an hour for me to do the jump. So that's my first break. So I end up coming here, and that's basically the genesis, the start. So my first job was, I would call myself like Blake and Wayne at the time's assistant. What we would qualify maybe as like an analyst, but not really doing a lot with financials. I was more calling. He had these A, B, and C broker list. And so he gave me B and C. And it was pretty funny because like almost every day I was calling through the whole list and like, hey, do you have any mobile home parks for sale? I was like, we talked to you yesterday. No, we don't. But yeah, doing stuff like that. I remember back then it was really hard to get numbers, and we didn't have the technology stack that we have now. And so I paid like a number sourcing company, and I remember we got like 1,200 phone numbers, and I called all of them over a course of 2 days. I just was sitting there dialing all day long. Maybe it was 3 days, but I ended up getting through the list really quickly, calling a few hundred people a day. Mostly, phone numbers that didn't work. A bunch of different stuff, and just that kind of stuff, sending mailers out. I do remember, I think it was like the founder of Cal-Am, somehow I got his cell phone. That was like one of the best numbers on the whole list. And it's like my first week, and I call him, and he was not happy that I had found his phone number, which everyone here at this office got a kick out of. But yeah, it was a great start. And so, learning, talking, I listened to the MH, what was it called? The Mobile Home University with Frank and Dave. And I kind of listened to their first round of CDs that they had laying around here in the office, just doing stuff like that, trying to get in the game. And my first real break here with the company where I was like, okay, I did something, was back in the day, Richard Sprizer. he was like a junior broker with another group. I forgot the name. They aren't even around anymore. And I was on, you may remember way back when, if you were on Google, it had pages, right? So I would think I was on page like 7 or 8, and it was like Pepper Lane in Phoenix, and it was this listing. Well, I call Richard Sprizer. He doesn't know who I am at the time. Obviously, because I'm a kid wearing Vans old schools in, probably cargo shorts here. And he goes, yeah, we sold that like years ago, but we do have some properties here. And so at the time, I think we had Peoria Palms, Royal Palms Village, and they had 2 properties, Highland, Cottonwood. Cottonwood was in it was in Cottonwood Heights. And we had 2 properties in Colorado, Highland and Brighton. And that was the whole portfolio. So only a few hundred units, somewhere between 12 and 20 million assets under management. And so my first break is he says, hey, we've got this property, Catalina Vista. And so we end up tying it up. We end up doing the deal. It was funny because I get this call and I don't know anything, right? So I go, okay, hold on one moment, sir. I think my pitch was I used to call and say, we've got $20 million to place. I don't even think we did. We were just trying to tie up deals and figure it out. And so I run upstairs. Blake and Wayne at the time were sitting here in our corporate office, and it's much different than it is now, but there used to be a big couch in the middle, and I ran up there and I go, hey, I've got Richard Sprizer on hold, and he has Catalina Vista. And so they end up getting on the phone, and Blake took it from there. And I think that at the time we were we were selling Highland, so we ended up doing a 1031 exchange, and so I helped prep all the paperwork for that. And this is kind of me this is my crash course, my first year. And so maybe after a few months, that deal gets tied up, they close it, and then we tie up Lamplighter and Prince Park. And at the time, Lamplighter was the pretty girl at the dance, and they didn't want Prince Park because Prince Park had like a couple burned down units. It had like a high vacancy rate. But bottom line is we end up taking them both down because that was a requirement for them to sell Lamplighter. And it was awesome. It was like, fast paced. You could feel the company growing, not a lot of staff. And it was really fun. And me and Blake, Blake was like, yeah, I could see it one day where we're flying around in airplanes looking at deals and closing deals. And I just was really excited about that. Well, we ended up tying up 2 deals. We just did an exchange. So obviously this is a company that owned 4 or 5 parks at the time. And now its footprint and space count has doubled. A lot of big movements, a lot of capital raising. And at that time, it was a small group. It was Blake, Jen, Wayne. They had another person who was running ops. And it was basically, they grew out of their shoes in that minute. And so I show up one day to the office, and Blake is mysteriously not there. And Jen and Wayne call me in and they say, hey, we've been using you to help with acquisitions. But we've just, really done and out kind of grown. Like, we're probably not going to buy a deal in the next 10, 12 months. So it doesn't really make sense for us to pay you to be in acquisitions. But we do need a lot of help in operations. We just bought all these deals. We've grown really quickly. And, we think that with your background in management, you'd probably be a good fit. And it hurt a little bit because, when I'm sure a lot of our viewers and people that come here, it's because you're trying to make a name for yourself, and the first thing you bump into is acquisitions. That's the flash, that's the pizzazz. And so property management wasn't as sexy to me, but I'm like, okay, I felt I could feel the growth of the company, I could see the trajectory of the company, and I did have management experience. So I said, all right, let's see what you got. So at that moment, Jen gave me 1 property. She gave me Brighton, Colorado. It's a 28 space community, dirt roads. And I joke around because it had clay main sewer, 1 clean out, and about 100-foot tall cottonwood trees that would karate chop that clay main and break it and flood. And it just was a tough park, lots of back bounce. I mean, I was given a total nightmare park. And that was my first deal. And so I started, kind of getting into the management of that. And pretty quickly, they had a list. I think it had like 28 tasks that needed to be done at the park. And I just I came from restaurants. You get your list of stuff to do, you do it, right? And a lot of management, if you've ever worked in fast food and you've been a shift supervisor or a manager, you know that you have your set lists that you have to do at shift change, at the start of your shift, throughout the shift. And so I took the checklist and started knocking it out. And I think it was like 2 weeks later, Jen was like, you know what? We've been talking, we want to just give you all of the parks, and you'll meet with me once a week and kind of go through your checklist and I'll make sure you're doing it. And so that's kind of when I got in and really started, doing what I do now and honing in my skills, learning a lot of things. It was a different time. I would say, are infinitely better operators than we were at the time, but it was a great crash course. I was learning kind of the baseline, and there will be other conversations we have where we talk about kind of the hierarchy of need that comes with property management and asset management. But yeah, just learning. It was a different time. We used to get manila envelopes filled with the money orders mailed by managers to the office. Our bookkeeper would take them to the bank to deposit them. I mean, it just was the Stone Age, and so I've got a lot of that kind of context in my head. But yeah, I kind of, start there. I remember a lot of what would happen is I would need to turn on and off utilities, and they wouldn't take me serious because my title was, I forgot what it was. It was like corporate assistant or something like that. So then they gave me my first title of area supervisor. So for my team in the field, if anyone bumps into this, I was the first area supervisor here at the company. And then we just kept growing. And then I started having my own area supervisor. So they made me VP of operations. And later head of operations. Around VP of operations is when we'll take it. I mean, we got a lot of time. We're going to be going through the whole story, right? And should I just keep going? Is this a good vibe?
Yeah, I can cut around. So.
Cool. So anyways, we're racing. We're doing good. Company's growing. Parks are getting better, and having a lot of fun. And during that time, Blake was so excited about doing deals. Wayne was so excited about doing deals that a lot of times the conversation would go into, it's all about doing the deal. And we would bring, people would come in and ask input and advice. And to this day, this is kind of the culture where we really get a lot of miscellaneous characters that show up and want Blake's input on life and management and business. And usually it's people that haven't done a deal. And so there became this kind of like, he's never done a deal. Not for me, but for other people, or it's like, hey, what should I do? And it's like, you got to do a deal. You got to close your first property. You got to get your feet wet. You got to draw blood. And so I kind of started taking it away where it's like, well, I haven't done a deal, And so I'm talking one afternoon with Blake and Wayne, and the conversation was kind of like, you should do one. You should do your first deal. Like, we'll be your first investors, but go and syndicate. We've got the docs, figure it out. And so remember, my first year, I may be in year 3 or 4, my first year, all I had done is call brokers. So I start checking the deals. I start calling people. I start figuring it out. And I remember I found I think it was 22 or 23 spaces right by Phoenix Airport, just one street, little deal. It was for sale for, I think it was $2 million. And I called the guy. I got financials. I start working with Blake to underwrite it. I start talking with friends and family. I've got a couple people that are considering it. This is right before I got married. So I got married 8 years ago. So this was probably 9 or 10 years ago, long time. And I get called in one day with Blake and Wayne again. And they said, we've really been putting a lot of thought to, we know you are considering buying a park. And we want you we want to make you a partner here. We want to make you in the initial membership, and you with this membership and as a partner with us, you're going to make the same if you went and bought out your own property, and then we can grow and scale together. So if we're winning, you're winning. And it was really a beautiful a moment, and I've now ever since kind of felt like I'm part of that. So I'm not out there chasing the deals directly every day, but as I've grown with the operations side, obviously I know fundamentally how deals tick. And so, I sit in our pipeline meetings, I give advice on what deals to buy and what deals not to buy. most of the time I feel like I'm heard. Every once in a while we buy a deal, and I always joke around, I'll manage any deal that you guys buy, but there's going to be ones I like more than others. But yeah, there's just to backtrack a little bit, there's also something to be noted. When I first came on, I was attending San Diego State University. I got in for advertising, but I was changing my degree to economics because I didn't feel like there was much money in advertising. It was kind of dying. It was before all this digital, it's really become a numbers game. Back then, it was still kind of the Mad Men style where, and I was inspired by that. I grew up in the surf world. I loved watching surf videos and seeing all the ads, and that was something that was appealing to me. But I didn't think there was money, so I was in the process of transitioning to economics. I was 9 classes away 1 year, and 1 summer school was going to be what I needed to graduate. But we were growing so fast that Blake had been kind of like, hey, you're at school a lot. Is this your focus? And I said, you know what? Forget school. I dropped out. I told him, hey, I'm dropping out. This is my full focus. You guys have me completely locked in. I just want to grow with you guys. And so I think the pairing of me dedicating my focus from an entrepreneurial pursuit with them, mixed with the fact that I was starting to underwrite and look at my own deals, and I think that in concert with each other kind of made that like, this guy's different. Let's bring him in. Let's make him part of our close circle. And so it was a blessing and a really a beautiful thing too. I kind of feel like family here with Blake and Jen and with Wayne. I spent 7 years every day talking to Wayne for a few hours a day. And so, I really miss him. He passed away, for those of you who don't know. Great man, great builder, and really gave me a lot of wisdom. So yeah, it's kind of like my origin, my genesis story to where we are today. So I currently oversee multiple departments, HR, accounting, all of the field operations down from regionals to area supervisors, lots of input on SOPs, training, kind of general vision. And I think that this might be like a good place to kind of segment into what does a chief operating officer do?